Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Tonight, I want to take a moment to talk about an irresponsible piece published in the Washington Post masquerading as journalism. The piece tries to make a stink about Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth's expansive security requirement and that it's straining the Army's Criminal Investigation Division. I can totally believe that a bunch of slacktivists who think defunding the police is a good idea or that Luigi Mangione is an innocent martyr would have a problem with SecDef Hegseth having too much security, though I don't think I would like to know why they would make such a fuss about that. But they didn't stop there. They intentionally published sensitive details about SecDef Hegseth's security detail for him and his family. Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell states, any action pertaining to the security of Secretary Hegseth and his family has been in response to the threat environment and at the full recommendation of the Army Criminal Investigation Division. CID themselves confirmed Hegseth didn't request the extra coverage. He's never interfered with their recommendations. Remember, right after Hegseth was nominated, there was a bomb threat against his Tennessee home. And it's not just him. Secretary Noem needs beefed up security due to death threats from her counterterrorism work. Even the U.S. Marshals are ramping up protection for judges like never before amid rising violence. We're talking about a climate of escalating politically motivated attacks. 2 assassination attempts on President Trump, ICE agents facing a 1,000% surge in assaults, and the constant threat of terrorist sleeper cells after 4 years of Biden's open borders. Yet WAPO has the gall to criticize a cabinet official for getting appropriate protection, when glorified left-wing blogs like the Post dock security protocols and movements, they're putting lives at risk. This story is like a Trump Secret Service agent leaking to the enemy. CID's even requesting 250 more personnel and $253 million in their budget to handle executive protection without skimping on investigations. That's called smart leadership. So I say enough is enough. We need an official FBI investigation into WAPO journalists Tara Kopp, Dan Lamothe, Alex Horton, and anyone at Army CID who might have leaked. This isn't journalism. This is a setup for something much, much worse, and it needs to be nipped in the bud before any mentally deranged haters of Trump and his allies find themselves in a situation that's aided and abetted by activists posing as journalists.
Welcome back to Truth Thursday. The Rob Maness Show's live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, the fight to support America's warriors continues, folks. Yes, my fellow Americans, we are still in a major fight. And it's just a fight to support our armed forces, warriors, and veterans. Even the Secretary of Defense, as you just heard from Vishbara himself, is not immune from the attacks trying to prevent him from doing the job President Trump appointed him to do. Washington intrigue and deception by individuals inside the government and the swampy press like the Washington Post are all in on undermining every fantastic policy that's aimed at correcting the course in this fight. From trying to achieve peace in Eastern Europe to reprioritizing our peace through strength effort and deterring China, the biggest adversary we have, eliminating wokeism at every level, and even making basic military training, boot camp, great again. They hate it. They even hate continuing to improve the Department of Veterans Affairs, for goodness sake. So disabled vets have the best access to the best health care that works for them, despite the bureaucrats running the place trying to stop it. but we will win because of efforts like at Veteran Action, an organization I introduced you to a month ago, and we support them. They are using their, what they call, quote, smash mouth, unquote, organization to hold scumbags like Arizona Senator Gallegos, former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, and Senator Denang Dick, as President Trump likes to call him, Blumenthal, accountable for abandoning veterans in the effort to pass the Veterans Access Act. And my guest today is Darren Selnick. Now, Darren, he's the senior advisor at Veteran Action. He's an Air Force veteran. Go Air Force. He also served in both of President Trump's administrations at the VA and Department of Defense, and is most known for his role in the creation and implementation of one of my favorite pieces of veterans legislation, the Mission Act of 2018. His other roles included, most recently, he was Deputy Chief of Staff to Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. He was the Veterans Affairs Advisor at the White House Domestic Policy Council. He's been the Senior Advisor to the Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs, and I think he might know where a lot of the bodies are buried. Darren, welcome to the Rob Maness Show, sir. Thank you very much for your time. I know you're a busy guy.
Thanks for having me on. It's great to be on with another Air Force guy. I can tell you very few. I live near Camp Pendleton. It's all Marines over here. And I do know where the bodies are buried, which is why there's a lot of fake news about me in the media. So,
yeah, the media loves you almost just as much as they love me. They love Pete Hegseth. They love Mark Lucas, Dan Caldwell. I mean, we're all just very well loved by all those folks and the people that love to work in D.C. too, man. It's very interesting. Let's talk about that opening clip first. I mean, my initial reaction was much like Bish's, yours. I saw your tweet, that Dan Caldwell's, Mark Lucas's, and a lot of us military guys and gals out there. Why are you revealing security information for the personal security of the Secretary of Defense and his family in the current environment? And Bish pointed out a lot of the environment, and you were on the staff working directly for the Secretary initially, so you saw all the reports coming in, and you're aware of why it's important to not reveal those, right?
Well, absolutely. As Deputy Chief of Staff, I had discussions about the manpower status of CID and the protective force. And as Deputy Chief of Staff, we have had, during that time through April, we had, cutbacks, civilian cutbacks, freeze on hiring. And I said, as Deputy Chief of Staff, we are not going to have the inability to properly staff CID or any other secretary office. So whether it's Pete Hegseth or anyone else who's secretary, that is, besides the president and the State Department, that is the top job that needs to happen in this country. And we will not have that not properly staffed. So there's a lot of things CID could have done or can do. For some rogue staffer to go talk to the media when they're not getting their way, or if they don't happen to like the secretary or the policies, is really unpatriotic, to say the least. Now, CID, we inherited from CID from the Biden administration, and it was understaffed. Under the Biden administration, whether it was CID, whether it was healthcare, we inherited a DOD that was a fixer-upper. And we were in the process of fixing up. It doesn't happen overnight. And CID can get other staff detailed in and other things. And it's absolutely correct, the clip you played. The secretary does not sit down with CID and say, I want this or I want that. They make the determination based on protective. And whether it's the secretary having lots of threats against them or other staff, even when I was over at PNR and put out some memos and stuff like that, I had some threats. I never activated any protective force, but it's a kind of a crazy world these days, and anyone who's doing anything to improve this country, there's a whole group of deep staters who don't want it, and liberals and leftists, and they will go after you and they will do crazy things. We have seen it. So Scalise got shot the other year. So the Secretary Hegseth needs whatever protection to take care of him doing the job, to do it right. CID comes up with that. they will do what they need to do, and other mission as essential things, they can get that support. They can get that support if they want it. That's why they need to work with the acting chief of staff, Ricky Berea, and whoever, the deputy secretary, and get what he needs, what they need. It's absolutely possible. And this is critical, and it is time for, if you have a disagreement, you keep it internal. You do not go to the press and put out sensitive information that could harm the secretary or other people in the DOD that need that protective services.
Yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about, since you were in the foxhole there for a bit with Pete and the others. Say again?
In the arena.
In the arena? Yeah. Well, it's some people call the bunker, the foxhole, the arena. Absolutely. The deep staters, as some people call them, I call them inside the DOD, the resistors. In our case, they take two forms: the civilian side, which is probably the staffer that you're talking about in CID. Wouldn't surprise me if that's like a civil service civilian level non-appointee, which makes it even worse from my perspective. But then there's the uniform side.
Right.
And I know you've written about it. Many of us have written about Lieutenant General Doug Sims, the J3 in the Joint Staff, Mark Milley, Maness, just to name a few examples of what appear to be partisan, political, and ideological generals that actually bring that into their office and their leadership in uniform.
Right. Right.
When you guys got in place, I mean, were you worried about the uniform side as much as the civilian side? I mean, I've been focused mainly on the civil service and the lower, the political appointees, 3 or 4 levels down from the political appointees, to try to get the resistors out of that. But the military side kind of surprises me a bit. And, Stu Scheller wrote that article, a week ago or so, about Sims and what he said to him when he was trying to get information, evidence about the Afghanistan withdrawal. And the guy says, well, you don't have any Democrats on your team, so I can't give you that. What?
Yeah, it's just crazy stuff. When we first came in, we were mainly just focused on the civilian side. And I had experience over in the VA with sabotaging President Trump's Mission Act and implementation, and being retired Air Force myself, I'm just kind of used to thinking the old days of being non-political, just doing the job. And I got to tell you, the vast majority of the careers, and even a higher percentage of the military, are exactly that. I mean, I can tell you at DOD, when I was doing P&R and the hectic, 24/7 days as Deputy Chief of Staff, the vast majority of the careers were the hardest working careers I had ever worked in. I mean, maybe that was a low bar because I came from VA. I don't know. But I mean, these guys are working weekends, and they were doing what they could do to do some really challenging things. And they may have not agreed with the transgender policy or reduction in workforce or hiring freezes, but they were doing it, and we were doing every possible thing to do these things humanely and to do this stuff. But as I worked on things like military healthcare and General Crossland and our own 3-star SMA over. At the very beginning, we started getting a wake-up call on a very small percentage, but it only takes a small percentage to kind of mess things up. And that's why you started seeing some of the generals, flag officers go. But I mean, there was 2 things. Were you non-political, and can you do the job merit-based? And so what I can tell you is, when I was at DOD, and I'm sure this has continued, when we went through the GOFO process and whatnot, generals that had to retire early, it wasn't because of an ideological test. It wasn't because, they worked under Biden. It was because they either were not going to support the secretary and the president and what the mission was, or they just didn't have the competence. And if you didn't have the competence, then, you couldn't continue on in a higher level position. And so these things are done very seriously. They're not done arbitrarily. There's a process and a procedure with the go forward boards and recommendations. So the press making it seem like, flag officers, high-ranking generals are just willy-nilly ideological tests is just not the way it happens. Now, of course, maybe they don't want to admit that Biden might have done that in some of that DEI woke promotions. And so we saw some folks, we saw some generals and whatnot that simply should never have been in the positions. They just didn't have, not to say they weren't nice people, but we're not talking about being a 3-star and 4-star nice people. And when I did some of the woke DEI guidance at PNR, I was amazed and disheartened at the lack of leadership that a lot of these 3- and 4-star generals had. I've given the example of like the Black Engineers Conference.
Right.
Black Engineers Conference, nice conference. They went every year. How they supposedly recruited Black engineers. We need Black engineers. We need all engineers in the military. But it was, we had guidance that if you had a woke conference, if you had things against the commander-in-chief, the president, to give them advance notice that we would not be attending conferences where DEI was the focus of the conference, where they were going against it. Well, they should have checked the Black Engineers Conference, or maybe they did. They saw some stuff. They kept asking us for guidance. 3 and 4 generals, guidance was enough. They wanted to cover. And we checked the website and we saw horrendous videos, anti-Trump videos, mocking the president and other DEI. And finally, I had to go send an email out across the Pentagon saying, you will not go to this conference. And I was kind of wondering, I'm like, am I going to get any pushback? Because, I had to go ahead and send it. And I was over PNR at the time, send an email out. I didn't get any pushback because they knew. And off to the side, they'd sit there and say, yeah, we just wanted your cover. And so in the follow-up meeting, because we had a weekly task force meeting on implementation of getting rid of the woke and getting implementation of the EOs and all that stuff like that. I said, hey guys, you guys have to set the example. You cannot want the cover of PNR. You've got to take our guidance, because if you can't make a decision, how would you expect your captain or your colonel out in the field to make a decision in the field? They are looking for your leadership. And if you can't provide the leadership, you are doing a disservice. So I chewed them out because, they needed to know that they needed to provide leadership and not cower in the Pentagon, afraid to tell the Black engineers that they were going to come because they had videos that were nasty about President Trump, the commander-in-chief.
Oh, Darren, the fact that we're probably so close to the same peer groups are having to tell people that are likely our peers at the 2, 3, and 4-star level, so they have top cover, that they don't need top cover. That gets to my point, man. We got to take a commercial break. When we come back, we'll see a great little clip from the current president of the United States about a certain guy named Da Nang Dick.
Somebody actually said you're hitting these candidates really hard. Here's a non-candidate, Da Nang Dick. He's a Da Nang Dick. That's Blumenthal. He talked about when I was in Da Nang province in Vietnam. And I was fighting up the hill, and men are going left and right of me. They're dying. They're being struck by bullets. But I went back to their rescue. I went back and I got them. And then I made a second attempt. And bullets are going left and right and over my shoulders, and they're hitting my men. And I used to think, wow, this guy's a pretty brave guy. And then I found out he's a fraud. He never was in Vietnam. Da Nang Dick, who said he was a great war hero, and he never saw the country. This wasn't like saying, hey, I was in the army. This is a guy that said he was charging up Da Nang province, right? Da Nang province. He's up that hill and he's taking bullets left and right. And he never saw the place. He was in the reserves, though. Remember that.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday, folks, and I could have skipped that video. We got a late break there, and I'm shorting ourselves the time with the guest, but it's too important to show to let people not see it. That people need to see it. I'm sorry, we're having some tech issues on my end here. So my guest today is Darren Selnick. He was the Deputy Chief of Staff to Secretary of Defense Hegseth. He's been a senior advisor and a senior official in the Department of Veterans Affairs. And as an Air Force veteran, and we need more Air Force veterans serving in the Trump administration. And I'm glad he was able to get in. Darren, I wanted to show that clip for its entertainment value because folks have to have something to chuckle about. But Dick Blumenthal is a stolen valor guy, hence the nickname, Da Nang Dick. And he's done some things with a piece of legislation that Veteran Action is trying to get approved, and I support that. It's called the Veterans Access Act 2025. But he's also leading the team to try to undermine President Trump's policy on the Ukraine-Russia peace deal, turning our priorities to strengthen ourselves to be able to actually deter China and focus on that highly valid threat, which is more extensive than any other country, including Russia, even though they've got more nuclear weapons than anybody. So I wanted to talk about that effort, both in the Congress and amongst the resistors in the Pentagon. Why are they opposed to a peace deal? Did you get any idea in the sense of that in your discussions and listening to people and working the policies?
Well, if you're talking about the peace deal with Ukraine, they are continuing their agenda that they had. I don't think under the Biden administration with the former secretary, I think the place was kind of on autopilot. Mm-hmm. And Biden didn't even seem to know that the Secretary of Defense, whether he was here or there, sick or healthy or whatever. Yeah. And a lot of them try to make the same mistakes with Ukraine that they make with Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. And so what we were trying to do is say, hey, what is the real threat going forward? And for the United States, it's not Ukraine, it's China. Mm-hmm. It's not Iran, it's China. And so I don't think they're opposed to peace per se, but I think they have their own way of wanting to do things. And unfortunately, a lot of these top generals and admirals think that they know better than everybody else and that everyone should just do what they want to do, no matter whether it works or not. Recently, I heard about some of the challenges in dealing with the Pentagon brass and that they want to continue to do everything, be ready for anything at any time, everywhere, which you just cannot do. So we have to identify what are our threats and be ready to take care of our threats and get rid of systems and personnel we don't need so that we can take care of the China threat and we can take care of the top threats, because we really can't be the world's policeman. We can't be everywhere, every place, ready for anything at any time. It's just impossible of a resource demand. Our readiness levels don't have it. Our healthcare system isn't having it. So we need to fix the place up. We need to focus on what we really need to do. And look, my grandparents came from Ukraine. I don't want to see Ukraine go down the tube, but it's a challenging thing. And I trust President Trump, the master negotiator, who's there talking to all sides, understanding what's going on to make the deal that will make lasting peace. Everyone knows you can't trust Putin. But what we've got to be able to do is have a lasting peace, have the security for Ukraine. And I think President Trump is the one who gets it. He's dealt with Putin before from the first turn and understands it. Sometimes you got to be out of the Pentagon to really know what's best for the Pentagon to do.
Yeah, I was glad to see the president openly say, "Hey, no troops on the ground in Ukraine from the United States perspective," because the last thing we need to interfere with our efforts vis-a-vis China is another open-ended, long-term, overextended military commitment in Europe, anywhere really. I mean, there are certain levels of activities we can maintain to support NATO, et cetera. But still, the bottom line is we've got to get the Navy back in shape. We've got the worst part of in my opinion, our weakness vis-a-vis China is the lack of sea lift and the lack of ability to manufacture our own ships here. And China can build 1,740 ships to R1 every year. Right. I mean, think about that. That's a huge problem. And we've got to get focused on that. Before we get to this next break, and I want the next half of the show, we're going to dive into the VA because I know you know where the bodies are buried there, and that's a favorite subject of every veteran. But before we do that, though, when we look at China and ship manufacturing and the budget of the Department of Defense, and I hear things like, well, the generals keep saying we got to be able to do everything everywhere. It sounds like the old, we got to be able to fight a world war, but then not really funding ourselves. Look, I was in the Pentagon and helped on 9/11 and helped put the GWAT plan together. And the first thing you see was that we were not organized for a world war from a combatant commander and a unit organizational and TO&E perspective. And we had to get to work to shore that up and put Band-Aids on it and start strengthening that. But we got a $1 trillion defense budget. And we can't do that. And we didn't really cut any fraud, waste, and abuse to speak of with the DOGE effort out of the Department of Defense. So isn't there some more ways to find money that can be used to help do things like get our shipbuilding back together from a military perspective? I mean, some of that's military shipbuilding, and to get focused on China without increasing our defense budget past $1 trillion. So these brass guys, I mean, they're out there saying we got to be able to do everything everywhere, and even $1 trillion a year can't do that.
We have to spend our money smartly. And one of the things that I was working on, and I worked with the DOGE and the DOGE team and the DOGE effort, it's all up and down the food chain, the supply chain. We have a lot of offices that aren't doing anything. And so, one of the things that the Deputy Secretary Steve Feinberg has been doing, and he does a great job, is, what is the military we need going forward, not the military we had in the past. What does that military need to do? And so we're trying to turn that ship very quickly. And in doing that, we have to do two things. We have to be efficient in everything we do, shipbuilding, munitions, personnel. But we also have got to get rid of stuff and weapon systems and personnel we don't need. So do we really need A-10s? If we don't need A-10s, why do we need A-10s? How do we replace A-10s? And so as we figure the military we need, not the military we have, that way we can get rid of the weapon systems we don't need. If we need more hypersonic missiles and dealing with China and not needing A-10s, and look, I'm a big fan of the old A-10s, but what are the threats we need that we have? What are therefore the capabilities we need? And inefficiencies. We have a lot of procurement, acquisition, contractual inefficiencies. We spend a lot of money duplicating processes between the services rather than doing global strategies. So there's a lot of ways, and we know that if we get those inefficiencies out, we can redirect them into what we need and therefore not have to increase the budget. So you can increase the budget all you want, but if you're wasting all the money, it's not doing you any good. So we have to make sure every penny spent well.
Yeah,
and we inherited a DoD that's not doing that. And that's where we're in the process of doing it. And once again, people want instant results. You can't turn the ship in 30, 60, 90, 180 days, but it's being turned. And that's the good thing. It's being turned.
Absolutely. Well, we got to take another break. When we come back, I want to talk about the Department of Veterans Affairs, the Veterans Access Act, and why these crazy veteran Democrats are trying to mess up that Veterans Access Act or oppose it outright. It's nuts. And Veteran Action has done some great ads against a couple of them to highlight that for their people. We'll be right back with Darren Selnick of Veteran Action.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
Pete Buttigieg is fighting Donald Trump's VA reforms, and he's pushing a woke agenda. He backed taxpayer-funded sex changes and wanted to rewrite Lincoln's VA motto, making it more gender inclusive. Buttigieg wants to take us back to Joe Biden's broken woke VA. Veterans deserve better, not woke politics.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday, and we're talking with senior advisor to Veteran Action that made that ad right there, Darren Selnick, and that's one of the two ads you're going to see in this show today, targeting Senate, or not Senate, but Democrat potential candidates for president that are veterans that are opposing making things better in the VA for veterans. It's unbelievable. And Darren Selnick was not only the Deputy Chief of Staff for Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, he has held high-level positions at the Department of Veterans Affairs in the last Trump administration, and also worked in USDP&R for I think a 6-month period of time, maybe, or something like that, Darren. I can't remember exactly how long you were in P&R, but those streams crossed between the VA and P&R and personnel and that kind of stuff. The one of the questions I wanted to ask is, at the VA, the Department of Veterans Affairs, is it as infested with resistors as like the Department of Defense? I mean, they're both big animals when it comes to bureaucracy.
At the VA, the healthcare part, Veterans Health Administration, is the worst. And one of the reasons is because there's no political appointees. So right now, there's 0 political appointees overseeing the entire healthcare system. That is because historically, the Undersecretary of Health is the only political appointee. And of course, as you've seen during the resistance from the Democrats, getting a political appointee appointed and confirmed in the Senate has been tough. So yeah, they are a great challenge. Fortunately, I've been able to provide advice on that because I have 9 years inside the VA, and I've dealt with that. I've learned all their tricks, and that's how we were able to get the Mission Act done. But basically, their view is that they know better than everyone else. They know better than Republicans. They know better than Democrats. They know better than veterans, and everyone should just shut up and just do what they tell them because they know better. But what they're really trying to do is, in terms of the career, and there are good careers there, but the senior leadership who's trying to perpetuate a 1990s healthcare system and a socialized healthcare system just wants control of the veteran. They want control of the money, and they don't want Congress, veterans, Secretary Collins or anyone else to get in their way. They just want to do what they want to do. And so getting control of that part of the agency and providing choice, and choice has been their bane of their existence, because if veterans could actually pick something other than them, then they lose that monopoly control. And under choice, they have been picking more and more and more. The percentages keep going up to where the community care is now expected to be about 45% next year, and will probably continue to grow as long as VA facilities and career folks who control those facilities don't do the job of providing good care at a timely manner.
Yeah, as a VA patient and person that access it, I want to personally thank you for the Mission Act of 2018. I knew you were involved in that at the highest level in getting it passed and creating it and all that. And thank you and all the team at Concerned Veterans for America, which includes Pete Hegseth and Mark Lucas and Dan Caldwell. I've worked with that organization for many, many years since I entered the political arena myself. And the goal of that, getting it passed, is just unbelievably positive. As a matter of fact, I did not agree to go to the VA as a person that sought VA healthcare permanent as a regular patient for my primary care until that act was passed because of what it does. But it didn't do enough, unfortunately. I have used. I wanted to tell a little anecdotal story. I've used community care in two ways. One is the urgent care piece that you guys improved and made sure stayed in place, and that is phenomenal. But the other was for dental care that the capability didn't exist inside the VA dental office, so they gave me community care. And the initial person that the doc, he goes, "Hey, we're going to do this." It was not a problem at all, but it was the 6-week wait on the bureaucracy just to get notified that I could do it. And then another 3 weeks to find a place to get an appointment. And then in 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks later to actually go to the appointment. So it's like 3 months long from the time the doctor says do it to the time I get the treatment. That's got to be fixed. Is that what the Veterans Access Act is one of the things it's going to do?
So it will partly do that. We had set up under the Mission Act, and basically, look, I'm not some great inventor of all this stuff. I just steal what's good. And TRICARE Prime, I'm a TRICARE Prime patient, works good. That's where I got the access standards. We originally set up a 2-day process to go ahead, which is similar to the DOD process. 2-day process, if you're eligible for community care and you want it, within 2 days, they're supposed to just process it, give you the authorization. That's what we set up under the Trump administration. Under the Biden administration, and we got, when I was over at CVA, before I came in the Trump administration, we got all these FOIA documents that showed where they purposely went ahead and started training staff and stopped following the Mission Act. So they put it together the referral coordination teams, et cetera. They did the trainings on that, and they wouldn't follow the 2-day process. So they put in place all these staff and committees and rules to stop the veteran from getting community care. And so a 2-day process started taking weeks and months, and the veterans didn't know that at all times that if they're eligible for community care, it's their right. There's an appeal process if they're denied that right. It's supposed to be a 2-day process. And so under the Biden administration, they broke these things, and working with SVAC and HVAC, that's where the Veterans Access Act came, was how do we fix and how do we put a fine point in the law that no, you can't do these policies. You have to undo these policies. And yes, we have the Trump administration now, and Secretary Collins and his team is in the process of fixing all the stuff that they can. But the Access Act has to make sure that in the future administrations, you can't do it. And that's why we want to codify the access standards. So it's not just regulation, that is permanent. And the Democrats want socialized care and they want to undo it. And they did a red team report in the last administration saying how community care was a threat. And look, we are agnostic in terms of veterans want to use the VA, veterans want to use community care. It's all about supposed to be veteran centric, and the veteran being able to get the care that works for them not what is best for the VA, but what's best for the VA. And that's what the Veterans Access does. It does things like improve the mental health, codify the access standards, make sure veterans are notified they're eligible, make sure that if they're denied that they have an appeal process. And basically most everything in the Access Act was in the Mission Act, but they refused to do it. They try to find workarounds, create new policies. And so Congress is saying, look, you are not going to be able to do that going forward. You're actually going to have to follow the law and your own regulations, and there's no wiggle room anymore. So we expect under Trump's VA and Secretary Collins, these things are in the process of getting fixed. We do want the new Undersecretary John Barton to get confirmed as soon as possible. So you actually have political leadership and his team in there as well. But we need to make sure these things are permanent and that a future Democratic administration cannot deny veterans timely, quality care of their choice.
Yeah. One of the things you brought up was the lack of political appointee positions. Right. Like, for instance, under the Undersecretary for Health, but everybody under that is a career, right? Did I understand that correctly? That's a similar. That's a similar issue that I spotted when I was looking at. Somebody asked me if I wanted to work in PNR a while back, and I went and looked it up, and I was surprised by the number of careers and the low number of political appointees there, and it's even worse under Secretary for Health. Is there a move afoot to transition some of those positions to political appointees?
Well, I can't speak about DOD. There wasn't a move on DOD when I was there, but I can tell you in terms of quiet conversations with committee members, there is a quiet look at how to do that and what to do, because VA only has about 40 political appointees for the second largest federal agency in the entire government. Yeah. Wow. One political appointee in the Undersecretary of Health, basically really only one real political appointee, a confirmed political appointee over at Veterans Benefit Administration. So yeah, we can take a few of the non-confirmed and toss them in there. But if we want to get control of the agency, if any future administration wants control of the agency, you need political appointees so that the agency does what the Congress and what the president wants, and not think that they can, hey, there's nobody around and can do it. This mentality has gone for decades. And I can tell you at one point when I was even in the Bush administration, high-level political appointees, high-level careers would tell me, hey, we do PowerPoints and we just tell the political appointees what they want to hear and do what we want to do. That's got to stop. We've got to actually implement. And that's why both at DOD and VA, we set up task force and we set up implementation teams and validation teams to go out and make sure that what the president wants, what the secretary wants, and how we fix these agencies is actually done. And the only way you do that is to go out there and validate that it's being done. And if certain career people are not going to participate, whether it's VA or DOD, that's why you got to get some people fired. And that's why we did the Accountability Act. So you actually fire poor performing employees that didn't do what they were supposed to do. So a lot of good things happening with Secretary Collins at the VA and stopping those bad union contracts and those sorts of things. It's going to be a lot of work, and we're going to need help from Congress to get the right kind of political appointees across the agency to actually be able to run the agency, and the agency not run, the administration or Congress. Yeah,
absolutely. We got to take our last break there. When we come back, we'll see the ad from Veteran Action about Senator Gallego. And I'm chuckling because it's a really good ad. But these guys have put together a great set of ads to hold people accountable that want to be president of the United States is what the bottom line is. Here's what I think. And I think you'll be impressed with it. And we'll continue this conversation with Veteran Action Senior Advisor and former senior Trump administration official, Darren Selnick.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home. Went to bed.
Scumbag Senator Ruben Gallego abandoned his 9-month pregnant wife. It's no surprise he's now abandoning veterans. He voted against Sam Brown to be Undersecretary of Memorial Affairs for the VA, and he's working with other Democrats to end veteran health care choice after 8 years. Tell Gallego to stop abandoning veterans. Learn more at veteranaction.org.
Truth Thursday. That's another great ad from Veteran Action. And if you're not supporting Veteran Action, go to veteranaction.org and you got to support them, folks. This group is doing fantastic. Their leadership and founder came out of Mike Davis's Article 3 project. And if you know the Viceroy, Mike Davis, then you know that he's doing good work on the lawfare side and judicial side of activism. Well, this group is the best veteran action group to help get the word out and get the message to Congress that they need to do certain things that I've come across. So you got to do that. And my guest today is their senior advisor, Darren Selnick, who's been a senior official in the Trump administration, both Trump administrations now, in the Veterans Affairs Department and the Department of Defense. And Darren, Sam Brown, the guy's a combat wounded veteran, and it's the Undersecretary of Defense for Memorials. Why oppose it? Was there ever a reason?
Politics. They just were opposing everybody. Sam Brown, great American hero. You look how he served his country. Look how he was injured. Great background. But this is why we still don't have an Undersecretary of Health in there. Why we don't have a Secretary of Benefits. Sam Brown, and just like opposing Veterans Access Act, it's not because they actually think Access Act is a bad act or they thought Sam Brown was a bad nominee. It's just that don't want to have Trump to win. Matter of fact, Nancy Pelosi in 2018 voted against and wouldn't even have negotiations on the Veterans Mission Act, simply because, and she said this to the chairman, Roe, at the time, I don't want Trump to have a win. So it's not about veterans for these guys. Mm-hmm. It's just about politics. It's about not wanting Trump to have a win and hurting Trump. Well, you're not hurting President Trump. President Trump is not the one who goes to the VA Medical Center. Right. You are hurting the veterans. And the VA used to be, and veterans issues used to be bipartisan, not anymore, because the Democrats are all politics. Gallegos is all politics. As a matter of fact, Phoenix, Arizona was where the big scandals in 2014 happened in the first place. And as a matter of fact, the other year, there was a veteran who went to the VA in Phoenix, and right as he was walking through the doors out of his appointment, he collapsed just outside the door of the hospital. Mm-hmm. And he had a heart attack, and the VA wouldn't help him. They called an ambulance from another hospital to take him because he was physically outside the door. He wasn't outside even the parking lot. He was just literally 1 foot from the door. They wouldn't help him. He died.
Wow.
So an ambulance had to come from another hospital. They wouldn't help him. He died. They had to do an investigation. Of course, no one was blamed for it. No one was fired for it. I mean, that's about what happens when you have a bureaucratic, socialized healthcare system under what Biden tried to put back together. That's the thing that's not going to happen in the Trump administration under Secretary Collins. If for some reason that strange situation was to happen, trust me, people would be fired. It would never happen again. And hopefully it won't happen again. But that's Arizona. That's what we have happening. And Gallegos, who's a veteran, should know better. He didn't get health care like that. If he was only used the VA, he'd be a totally different tune, as would Blumenthal and the rest of these Democrats who like to play politics, but it's, they have the best health care in the country, but they don't want the veterans to have the best health care.
Yeah, it's really strange. The three people that we've highlighted in this show are all veterans, whether you believe their records or not. This one is another thing, like denying Dick, but he's a veteran. He was in the military, right. And it surprises me because I've on 501c3 efforts at Military Veterans Advocacy Incorporated, I've gone up and briefed the SVAC and HVAC and the members of the committee and their staffs and all that. And before this, it seemed everybody was like bipartisan. And hey, this is about the veterans, and I'm like John Tester. I've sat with him before and chatted with him in a meeting, and when he was the chairman, and before that, and all of those folks seem to be want to be nonpartisan in that committee and their approach to that. But that's not why would the veterans go on the committee go along with this stuff? Is one of the questions I have, and you can't answer that obviously. But because politics has gotten really bad, if we can't even cross the aisle for our veterans anymore. One of the things I wanted to ask you about the act itself is there anything? There's a couple of specific things. Does it do anything for making sure that mental health care appointments are timely? Because that's one of the issues that has contributed, from my perspective, to veteran suicide. Is folks not being able to get appointments in a timely manner on the mental health side.
Right. Yeah, that's probably one of the most important pieces of the legislation is mental health. Under the Biden administration, they were not following the Mission Act. They were not letting veterans get their care in a timely manner. Matter of fact, I had one veteran and a provider call me up in the community who needed substance abuse, and he needed it right now. And the VA, all they said was, hey, we don't have a bed open, so we'll get you an Uber to a homeless shelter. You can't take veterans who need mental health and substance use residential immediate and send them to homeless shelters on an Uber. So yes, but this is very prescriptive. VA could be doing this now, but they're not, because they would rather a veteran suffer or die from suicide if they don't have a bed than actually get timely care. So the bill would say, hey, within 48 hours, you're going to have to identify whether that veteran needs immediate residential health or just routine residential mental health. And if they need immediate residential health, you've got 48 hours to get them in place. And if you don't have a facility that's within the right distance from the access standards, and you're going to listen to the veteran what they need as well, then you're going to give them community care. So 48 hours to identify, 48 hours to get them placed, whether it's going to be at a VA facility or community care facility, you're going to get them taken care of, whether that's residential substance abuse or residential mental health. So yes, it's a very key, important prescription of using the existing authorities in the Mission Act to make sure veterans get timely, convenient, close by mental health and substance abuse care, whether it's routine or whether it's priority, so that we do not have those suicides, that we do not send veterans to homeless shelters while they're waiting. That is never going to happen again. That's what this bill is going to do.
That's fantastic news, sir. Thank you so much for putting that in. What about the way it's treated? People are treated. The big issue on the suicide issue with veterans is overprescription from our perspective, me being a veteran, of SSRIs, but an unwillingness of the VA or inability of the VA, one of the two, to look at treatments like combination PTSD, TBI, using things like hyperbaric oxygen therapy, HBOT therapy, and being able to pay for that treatment through the VA, and alternative methodologies besides these getting prescribed all these drugs. Is there something in there that tries to take that on, or is that a different set of policies that need to be looked at?
Well, that's a separate, different policies, and we're working with senators and representatives on that. But the first thing is making sure veterans have the choice. So if if the VA doesn't work for you, for whatever reason, that you can go to the community. And trust me, I've heard these horror stories of veterans having disagreement with their psychiatrists on their treatment plans and being put in the 72-hour observation ward sort of thing. And then the veteran never goes back. And that's why we have the separate bill that was passed a number of years ago with the emergency mental health for all veterans. If they're suicidal, they can go get taken care of wherever they need to immediately. So we have some separate policies. But the first thing is, if VA is not going to provide the type of mental health or substance abuse treatment that works for the veteran, they should be able to go somewhere else. We will be working after this bill to make sure that we expand choice so that at all times the veterans can pick in terms of the VA. But for this bill, it is properly using the existing Mission Act authorities to make sure veterans, whether they're using the VA or they're using the community, can get that quickly and quality. But we do need to make sure in the future going forward past this bill, as we work with senators and representatives, that we want to make sure at all times that there's all sorts of new treatments, hyperbaric chambers, other treatments that are out there. And VA has a tendency to be lagging in the adoption and investigation of those treatments. I remember even all the way back to the Bush administration with equine therapy, when that was being used successfully, and the VA was the last to adopt that or even talk to anybody about that. So Senator Tuberville is on the forefront of this. I've talked today, Senator Sheehy's staff, they're on the forefront of some bills. So there will be other bills as follow-up to this to continue to make sure veterans have the choice and the quality and the access to the treatment that works best for them, and not just VA on their own saying, we just want to do this, so that's the only choice you have.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned the bureaucrats not wanting to do things. I was on the board of directors for Military Veterans Advocacy, and it took that group 15 years to win a court case, the Procopio case, that eventually gave the Navy veterans for Vietnam their Agent Orange benefits back. And then the PACT Act was able to build on that. But a lot of the same people are still in that headquarters that were saying no to those things. And it took literally in the Agent or the Navy, Blue Water Navy guys, it literally took a spouse of a Navy sailor to find the data and the information that we were able to use. And our boss, Commander John Wells, the founder of it, who's also an attorney, was able to take the case to the federal district court in D.C. and win. Right. But the same people are still there. Is there? Yep. What is the path forward for this administration if Secretary Collins and President Trump? Do they have a plan, or are they working on a plan to try to address cleaning the place out and getting people in there that actually are thinking like what you're talking about is the veteran's choice comes first?
Right. So what I can tell you, and I've had some confidential conversations, but I can only tell you at a high level, there is a plan. They are working on the plans. They have quietly done reviews of the facilities. They've done reviews of the community care. The Domestic Policy Council is working with the new political appointees on how to fix things up, how to move forward, and how to do these sorts of things step by step. So step one for everyone is the Veterans Access Act. And then they will identify and after the Undersecretary of Health has confirmed the overall other plans that they are working on in cooperation, in sync with Congress. Because like I've told them, if you come up with a plan and HVAC and SVAC doesn't know about it, because they're going to sink your plan. So it's not something you can do unilaterally. You need to do it. But look, there's a lot of good members and senators in HVAC and SVAC, a lot of good new staff working for Secretary Collins. And good staff on over in OMB and I know I'm using a lot of alphabet soup here, and Domestic Policy Council, except so everyone is working right now behind the scenes to put together the plans and the actions so that by the end of the Trump administration, this will be a modernized, reformed, transformative Department of Veteran Affairs that is efficient, it is veteran centric, and I spoke at a IDGA healthcare summit, I said, look, the goal down the road is that one day, we're not there in a long shot, but one day what we want is people to think of veterans healthcare, the Trump way of doing veterans healthcare, as the best healthcare in the country.
Absolutely.
And it is not, but that's the goal. Yeah. Whether they get that healthcare through the VA facility and it's good, or they get it at the community care. But when I worked for President Trump, I always told everyone the president's vision is veterans should always have the best. They should be the best VA facilities, and they should be the best community care. We're not settling for any poor VA facilities or any poor community providers. Veterans should have the best, and we need to set that up so it is the best. So the veterans who have served this country and many times have died for this country, and their spouses and widows, they can get the best health care in the country. They've earned it. They've deserved it. Our disabled veterans, our combat service-connected veterans deserve the best, not the bottom of the barrel.
Well, sir, thank you so much for spending so much time with us today. We will get this word out and continue to push veteranaction.org out. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your service, too. It's always good to spend time with a fellow Air Force veteran and talk about this critically important stuff.
Thank you for the important service you do doing your podcast. It's very important.
Thanks, Darren. Well, Monday is More War Monday again, and retired SOF Lieutenant Colonel Doc Pete Chambers, current governor candidate for Texas, is with me to talk about the war going on still at the border and the war internally in this country to put Americans first every single time in our public policy. I'll see you then.